Hello, my name is Ben Bell, and I am a second year physical therapy student at Elon University. And I'm excited to get to talk to you guys today about nutrition and send you this video through the Elon CARES network. So just wanted to share a little bit about me and my experience with nutrition is first of all, I'm a certified athletic trainer. So I'm an individual that works with the sports medicine side. I've also been able to be on a research team that was a part of a diet weight loss study at Wake Forest University. And I also have two parents that are registered dietitians. So they've been able to teach me stuff throughout the years as I've been able to live in their home and eat from their food that they've cooked, and just learned a lot underneath them. And so some of the reasons why I've kind of wanted to do this video on nutrition is one, like obviously a love for food. I mean, who doesn't love a good Eddie's cookies and cream ice cream, right? So another thing too is just the betterment of people and knowing how food impacts people. You know, you have those days where you eat really healthy, you eat certain foods that makes you feel good, you run really well, you have a ton of energy, and then you have those other days that it affects you a whole lot and you feel down, you feel like you have GI symptoms and other things that just don't make you feel right. So hopefully through some of this video, you can learn maybe a little bit of something that you can impart into your future well-being. And then another thing too is associated with food, usually there's community. So like you think about all the major holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, they're typically associated around food, grilling out, having a wonderful time with friends, family. And I think being able to have time with food and individuals that you love, I think is an important experience to share and cherish. And so I hope through this video, maybe you can have a little bit more of an understanding and a bit more of a change in that perspective on food. Okay. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I have a PowerPoint with lots of different information on there. I figured that would be the best way to communicate to you guys what would be necessary. So go ahead and share this. Righty. So this is it. This is quite a spread to start off with. I mean, that would be quite a good meal right there to start off with, if I don't say so myself. So what we would like to go over today is obviously just got through the introduction, looking at calories, looking at macro, micronutrients, what both of those mean, your different food groups and portion sizes, being able to read that super confusing, maybe dreadfully overwhelming food label, calculating a full meal, and then capping off with looking at some medical conditions and then some outside resources for you guys to utilize to continue on with this. So calories, you've heard this a lot. You see it on those food labels. Everybody talks about it, like don't eat too many, don't have too many calories, but calories are obviously going to be our main fuel source. And the amount of calories that you consume per day are going to be unique to every individual. So what's supplying an energy for one person may be different for another person. So that can vary on someone's age. It can vary on their activity level, their height, their weight, or their medical condition. So a lot of different factors that can come into play when looking at the amount of calories that someone should eat. So one of the first things that dietitians will look at is being able to understand what is your baseline. How many calories do you need to survive a full day with you just chilling, hanging out, doing nothing? And so that's your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR. And so that's going to be different for men and women. So I've showed you the calculation for men and then women there. So if you're able to plug that in adding your weight in kilograms, your height in centimeters, and your age in years. But what I have also been able to find is there is a simpler way of doing it too. And it's literally just taking your weight and multiplying it by 10. So for me, I'm about 185 pounds, multiply that by 10. So my BMR would be about 1850. That is a very generalized number. To get a accurate BMR, you would have to go through further testing to determine that number. And so the next piece of information you would want to look at is your total daily energy expenditure, or your TDEE. And that is basically looking at the energy your body needs, your BMR, and then also the energy that you utilize throughout the day. So if you are walking your dog a mile at lunch and a mile at dinner, you're exercising for 2 hours a day. So you have to account for that energy expenditure. Or if you play badminton, tennis, whatever it is, like you kind of have to account for that amount of time and energy utilized in your day. So take your BMR and multiply it by anywhere between 1.2 to 1.9, depending on that activity level. So next, what we were kind of going to dive into is understanding a bit of a difference between the macronutrients and the micronutrients. Macronutrients are fittingly described as you need more of the macronutrients as opposed to the micro ones. So they're smaller amount, macro, bigger amounts. Those macronutrients are going to be your carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and then your micronutrients are going to be your vitamins and your minerals. Next, what we're going to talk about is carbohydrates. So carbohydrates get an unfortunate bad rap sometimes. A lot of people say carbohydrates are bad. I don't want those. Those are going to mess me up or whatever it is. But that's false, actually. So carbohydrates are a necessary fuel source for us. It's typically utilized as a quick energy fuel source. Like working with athletes, that's typically something that you will see. Athletes will consume a bit of fruit or granola bar or some sort of small carbohydrate dense prior to their performance, prior to their race or their competition, to ensure that they have enough energy to sustain them. And so carbs can kind of be divvied up into a couple of different categories. Sugars, which are going to be more of your candies, your carbonated beverages such as sodas. You're going to have your syrups, your table sugar, or anything that just has that added sugar. And then you have your starches and then your fibers. Starches are going to be things like corn. And then your fibers are going to be more of those denser foods, those darker, browner, more earthy kind of looking food. So there's going to be like your wheat pastas, your whole grain, multigrain wheat breads. You could also have beans, different types of pasta, sweet potatoes. And the fibers, food that are high in fiber are going to be longer sustaining sources of carbohydrates. So as opposed to the sugars, it's going to give you that rush of energy really quick, and then it's going to taper off really fast. And so sugars is obviously something that is talked about a lot with type 2 diabetes and being able to manage our A1C. with the fluctuation of your blood glucose levels. And then your simple versus complex, your simple sugars are, I'm sorry, your simple carbohydrates are going to be those things that are going to be processed, refined, or have that added sugar. And these are not going to have really a lot of nutritional value for us. It's going to lead to those empty calories. And those are, again, those things that I talked about with the sugar. And then your complex carbohydrates. So those are going to be things like legumes, all your whole grain breads and pastas, things like that. And then starchy vegetables are going to be some good items for your complex carbohydrates, foods that you're really going to want to consume on a daily basis. And another thing I forgot to mention about the simplex carbohydrates is that fruits are going to have that simple carbohydrates, but they're obviously not. They're not going to be that refined processed sugars. They have this own little their own little section of naturally produced sugars, which are going to be good for you. Next, we're going to talk about our fats. So fats make you fats. I know a lot of people have talked about that in the past. You hear that just from common culture sayings, and that is false. So there are, again, multiple different types of fats, which I'll kind of get into, but just kind of the purposes to fats are, one, it's going to be normalized for proper body functioning. It can help maintain body temperature and ensure insulation within the body. And then it can help with healthy skin tones, normal nerve functioning, and also helps with the transportation of vitamins and being able to metabolize them and then sustain them and hold them as storage. And so some of the different types of fats that you'll typically see on like food labels will be saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats. So the sat fats, the way I remember it is the sat fats make you fat. Those are more of the bad ones. The trans fats are also bad. They're going to be more of those processed foods, ones you do not want to consume. And then your last one is going to be unsaturated fats, which is going to be the good kind of fats. So, and then they break it off into your HDL, LDL, and your triglycerides. I know a lot of people have heard about HDL and LDL, and we know that your HDL is your healthy fat or your good fat. So these are going to be your fats you want to consume. These will be things like avocados, fish, nuts, olive oil, yogurt, or coconut oil, or just coconuts. Your LDLs are going to be your bad ones. These are things that are going to raise your cholesterol levels that a physician is going to notice or is going to check if you come in for like a routine checkup. And then triglycerides are the fats that are mainly going to be stored on your body. And those can also be utilized as energy, or it's just used as storage. And the last of the macronutrients are going to be your proteins. So typically people say that you only have to have protein to build muscle. Well, that's false as well. Generally you need all three to build muscle, but proteins are very essential in order to actually have that muscle mass production. And they're going to be essential for a lot of other bodily functions. So it's going to be the chemical foundation for all cells, antibodies, enzymes, and hormones that are naturally occurring throughout the body. Without these proteins, these aren't able to function as properly as they should. It also helps stimulate and further develop wounds as they go through the healing, and injuries as they go through a healing process as well. The body also utilizes proteins to help with oxygen transportation. So without this protein, you would see none of these processes would be able to go through. So some proteins that are some good food sources that have protein in them are going to be basically your any types of meat, fish, tofu, quinoa, beans, nuts, almonds, dairy, and lentils. And just from what I've kind of learned through the nutritionists that I worked with, is it's important to eat your protein portion of your meal first in order to ensure that um, you don't leave out the protein portion of your meal, but that you um, that you don't fill your body up too much prior to getting to the protein portion. So that's why it's recommended to go first. Go. Micronutrients. So we'll be kind of brief with this. It's going to be looking at vitamins and minerals. So vitamins can be broken down into your fat soluble. So in order for the vitamins to be utilized throughout the body or metabolized, you need fat to dissolve this and utilize these. Some of the vitamins, I like to use the acronym DEEK. So vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin A, and vitamin K. And then water soluble is obviously dissolved in water. And these are just going to be two, the B complex vitamin and vitamin C. And then next we have our minerals. Minerals are going to be consumed in very small quantities. Actually, both vitamins and minerals are going to be very small quantities. But we can look at minerals through obtaining fluid and electrolytes, like with our sodium and potassium. Sodium is something that a lot of people, low sodium diets are something that a lot of people move towards with heart related conditions. And then potassium, like with your bananas, that's something where you can gain a lot of potassium. Bone health, we all know, with osteoporosis and calcium and magnesium. And then oxygen transport, we know with people that are anemic, they typically are low in iron levels. Next, we're going to talk about some food groups and just looking at the portion sizes that you should be consuming on a meal or daily basis. So what I have demonstrated here is the old model of the food groups. So you'll see on the right, the pyramid that you probably learned that was taught way back in school. Now the U.S. Drug Administration is moving towards this my plate way of teaching it. So you're looking at fruits and veggies. Typically, fruits and veggies are going to be recommended to do about a 1-to-2 ratio. So if you have 1 serving of fruit, you should have 2 servings of veggies, or 2 servings of fruit, 4 servings of veggies. As you can tell, veggies are a good bit bigger than the fruits. And then you have your grains or your starches. Those are going to be high in carbs. And then you have your protein portion. Proteins can either come from, your plant or your animal sources. Your plant are going to be the more healthier option, just because it's not going to have as much fat of that saturated fat that we kind of talked about earlier. Animals can, you can obtain very lean meat from animals. So that is good. But then typically, if you're buying meat from the grocery store, you'll have to look at and see how lean the meat is to determine how much fat is within it. And then next you have your dairy. Your dairy is going to have actually all 3 macros. You're going to have proteins, you're going to have carbs, and you're going to have fats all within it. So that's a very good obviously a good food group to have to ensure that you have with each meal. And then fats is not technically listed here, but it's something that's important to ensure that you are eating with each meal. So again, you want to make sure you're either low or reduced saturated fats. And then you're adding that plant-based fats or the unsaturated fats that we kind of talked about earlier. Now here it is, the food label, and I know it can kind of seem overwhelming at first, but I hope to make it a little less overwhelming, just kind of explaining just the whole layout of it all. So the biggest thing that most people look at is the calories here, but what I will note off the bat is that this is all the percentages are going to be all based off a 2,000 calorie diet. And again, 2,000 calorie diet is not for everyone. So you go up to the very top and you look at the serving size. So the serving size indicates how much is, how many calories, how many fats, carbs are within each serving. So if I took 2/3 of a cup of whatever this is, let's just say this is cereal or whatever. So this 2/3 cup is going to be 230 calories, 8 grams of fat, 37 carbs, and 3 grams of protein. Okay, so 8 grams of fat is going to be 10% of my daily value based off that 2,000 calorie diet. If I were to have 2 serving sizes of this cereal, it would go up to 16 grams of fat and it would be at 20% of my daily value. So you can do that for every single category here. So as you go through and you look at each one, it shows you saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, sodium, and it breaks down carbohydrates and the sugars. When you look at included sugar or added sugars, those are the bad sugars that I kind of referred to. So most likely the 2 grams that are left over from the total sugars are the potentially more fruit-based sugars that are not going to be processed or refined at all. And then you see the minerals on the very bottom, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. And so if you, and then look at the very top, the portion that I missed is this whole container has 8 servings. So if you had to do the math on the whole thing, the whole the whole box of cereal, if you were to eat the whole thing in one sitting, which would be pretty crazy, would be, if my math serves me correct. So we would do it's gonna be a lot of it's gonna be a lot of calories there. But so again, noting that this is all the daily values are going to be based off a 2,000 calorie diet. And they used to not have some of these labels on here previously, and they've added a few of them just to ensure that people are being able to regulate what they're eating, which is a good thing. So now this is the kicker. So I did all the math pre-hand, so I wouldn't have to try to do it in my head on video. So this is a full meal, the full layout of what ideally like a dinner would be. So you see the food is on the left, servings consumed. So that's for the chicken, skinless chicken, that's 2 servings consumed of 4 ounces of a serving size. So I essentially consumed 8 ounces of chicken. And then same with olive oil, but I just only had 1 serving size of this. Bread, I had 2, because who has a, this is a sandwich, and who has a sandwich without 2 slices of bread, right? So, and then you look on the right-hand side. So I did the serving size times calories like we did on the food label. So 1 serving size is going to be 100 calories. And I had 2 serving sizes. So it's 2 times 100. So 2 times 100 is 200. And so you can kind of work that all the way down. I'm going to go to the yogurt and berries. So this may be a little bit confusing, but I had half of a serving size. So I had half of 4 ounces. Half of 4 is going to be 2 ounces. So looking at the math over here on the right, 80 calories is how much 4 ounces of berries would be. Since I had half of a serving size, I'm going to divide it by half, and it's going to produce 40. So with the yogurt and the 40 calories, it's going to equal to 230 calories on that. So you can kind of look through this whole chart here, give you a second to look at it. Then of course, the very end, like who doesn't have a dinner without having some delicious dessert? Mine would definitely be Oreos. So yeah, so you see the total calories there would be 1,182 total calories. So that would be a pretty hefty meal right there. And then next to last slide, we are looking at kind of some medical conditions and some certain recommendations or foods to stay away from or lean more towards. So diabetes is probably the biggest one. Very well-known metabolic disease, and it's important to regulate your A1C levels, and that is going to be helpful through consuming foods that are slower digesting, so more of those complex carbohydrates, your fibers, your plant-based fats, and your plant-based proteins. Those foods that, as I'll talk about with the HDL, that do not stagnate the blood through adding blood glucose levels. Cardiometabolic diseases, so those are things like heart attack, stroke, and also diabetes. That would be lowering your sodium levels. So not adding too much table salt into your vegetables, and just adding just a little bit, or taking a canned veggies that have low sodium listed on there. Looking at things like that as you're shopping through the grocery store or cooking in the house. High cholesterol levels or hyperlipidemia. So you're looking at that HDL versus LDL. So looking more again towards those plant-based fats that are going to be basically it's a fat that helps eliminate the LDLs that can be consumed through more of your animal-based fats, and your LDLs are going to be the fats that are going to be ones that will accumulate within the blood or within the vascular structures, and can potentially lead to issues down the road. Gout is one that is encouraged to pursue after low saturated and trans fats. Osteoporosis is pretty well known to increase your calcium to help with bone growth. And then kidney stones, I know this is probably a super painful one, is just limiting sugary drinks. I know from the nutritionist I work with that she totally eliminated sweet tea from her diet because she was very prone to developing kidney stones. And if you ever have kidney stones, I've heard the big trick is being able to drink lemonade. That can be a very useful drink that can help break down the kidney stone. And most importantly, I am not your medical provider. I do not know each of you guys that are watching this video, but please speak to your medical provider or a registered dietitian about what would be the most important thing for you, because every person is different. Every person has a unique and different case. And these are just the general this is just the general scope of certain medical conditions and things that need to be kind of regulated, but I am not actually saying anything at all like this is what you have to do, this is what you totally should do. This is just kind of showing you information on it. Okay. And the last little bit is just outside resources for you. So hopefully this will be posted in the link at the bottom of this video. This will have very good information from nutrition.gov, the FDA, the American Heart Association. This hunger scale is something to look at as you are consuming and eating foods, is being able to almost have a metric or a quantitative data on how you're feeling throughout the day or after you're eating meals. It'll kind of show you what ranges to stay within. And it all makes sense when you pull it up, the image. The food portion sizes, which I showed you earlier, modifying your diet with healthy options. So this is just how can you substitute things that you normally cook with, but are healthier options that are pretty similar comparatively in taste. And then probably one of my favorite items on here is the food calorie calculator. And you guys may have used this before, but it's MyFitnessPal. This is something that we use a lot in our diet study. And you can literally type in any food into this website, and it'll show you all the calories, all the fats, carbs, everything that you want on this food. So I went in there and typed in McDonald's Big Mac, which you should not probably be eating, but it shows you all the information that you can type in. Cracker Barrel's food. You could type in, an apple. So countless things. You just have to be wary. The differing, like if you are cooking from home, making sure you're adding in all the other spices or different elements that you've added to the food. So that you're accounting for all those calories that are being consumed, and it's not just what MyFitnessPal has listed on there. And so, yeah, the last little bit is, I think, as the takeaway point is, food can be very overwhelming. It can be very hard to find options, especially during COVID now. You may still be isolated now, still living at home, not being able to get out as much, or you have trouble finding good substitutions, good food, or you just don't have the financial resources for it. I hope that this is not too overwhelming, but can kind of be somewhat of a supplement to how you're living your life now. And maybe you can make some adjustments for, one meal a day, maybe two. I hope that this can transform your mind towards thinking better about food and realizing that food is a great asset to your life, but it shouldn't control your life. Food isn't everything. It is important for us to ensure that we're eating it and ensure that we are continually eating the right things for our life. And that's why if you have problems with, or have struggles or have issues with it, please speak to your medical provider or see if he can get you a referral to a registered dietitian. Okay. So that is it from me. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed chatting with you guys and getting to inform you a bit on nutrition, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Hey everyone, it's Luke Freese from Elon CARES. Thank you so much for stopping in and watching our video. If you want to watch our most recent one, click over here. If you want to learn a little bit more about us, click down below on the social media. And before you leave, comment about your favorite part from this episode down below, okay? Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.